Hello, my name is Dave from Black Leadership Analysis, and I wanted to talk to you today about the Highlander Folk School. It has been recently vandalized and burned to the ground, operating outside Knoxville, Tennessee. And they did find a white supremacist emblem painted on the parking lot, in the parking lot. So they suspect that it was intentional arson by white supremacists. Now this is significant because the Highlander Folk School is where Dr. King did a lot of his training with the SCLC. So Highlander Folk School started in the 1930s with a guy named Miles Horton. And Miles Horton's whole modus operandi was to create a school for Appalachian people that taught them about themselves. That way they would learn how to learn, discuss their own problems, and come up with solutions to the problems. One of the biggest problems Miles saw in education as it was in the 1930s was people were learning about things that had nothing to do with them. They learned how rich, wealthy people live their lives. And it was very distant from who they were. And by always looking at someone else's life, they never could figure out solutions to their own life. And so he started the Highlander Folk School, and he named it Highlander Folk because that's what the Appalachians called themselves. You know, scholars from outside called them Appalachians, and people that disliked them called them hillbillies, but they called themselves Highlander folk. So him and his wife was actually a great musician, and they began the school, and it was about labor organizing when it first started. And they worked with many of the people in the mountains of Tennessee, and they built labor camps and taught about socialism or unionism more than socialism. Because socialism has a bad rap, and there's all kinds of different types of socialism, but they're basically teaching about how to start a union. And all those people that came there and got educated, they ended up becoming union leaders. So they did that for a long time. But the next generation, they understood the fight had gone from workers to black people. This is when the civil rights movement starts. So they start learning how to organize protest for civil rights. And so 6 months before the Montgomery bus boycott, Rosa Parks came there for a school on how to protest for civil rights. And it was a great experience for her because she saw whites and blacks working together for civil rights. And that was the first time she understood that it is possible for whites and blacks to work together to build a better America. And that's what gave her hope in that there are some altruistic white people that she never met that before. So Highlander Folk School switches to civil rights. Now, when this goes on, that's what gets them the communist label. So the state of Tennessee comes in and starts harassing them, saying they're communist. And they have this picture of Dr. King in what they call a communist training school. And that's actually the Highlander Folk School. So they took a picture of him in class, and they circulated it around like it was a communist front. So I'm not exactly sure of the full timeline because I didn't have time to sit down and do the full research. But at some point they actually take the Mount Eagle property. The government seizes it because of the Red Scare. And they actually move to a farm outside of Knoxville. And from what I understand, there is a historical site still in Mount Eagle that you can go visit. But what was burned to the ground by the white supremacists was actually the farm in Knoxville. And so the song We Shall Overcome was actually written in Highlander Folk School. One of the things that Miles Horton did back in the 30s was he taught clogging at the school because he was angry at the fact that when he went off to college they had classes on the waltz. And he knew as an Appalachian he'd never be invited anywhere where people would be waltzing. So when he came back to teach the people in Appalachia, he wanted to teach clogging because that's what they would be doing with each other. And that's one of the reasons so many people came to the school, and then from there they used that as the segue to teach about unionism. So Miles Horton's wife was also a great musician, and she did a lot of studying of the Appalachian clogging and bluegrass music. And so a lot of the studies of bluegrass that you might see in academic circles, that would probably goes back to Miles Horton's wife, and I can't think of her name right now. I'm going to put it in the comments when I look it up. But so with that, a lot of folk musicians came to Highlander School. One of them was Pete Siegel. And they had a union song called "We Will Overcome." And they were singing that at Highlander School. And when the civil rights marchers from Birmingham saw it and heard it, they learned it. But they changed the song to "We Shall Overcome." And so this was the Birmingham campaign, not the Montgomery campaign, okay? So in the Birmingham campaign, they had a standoff with the police, and they were going to stay nonviolent, so they sang "We Shall Overcome." And the second verse was added at the protest, and it was "We Are Not Afraid." And so that's how "We Shall Overcome" came about, and it started at the Highlander Folk School. So this is like a huge monument for black people, and really America, because the civil rights movement improved all of America. And at the moment, they were working on fighting for transgender rights in rural areas, and also immigrant rights in rural areas. And the same studies they did on bluegrass music, they were doing on Hispanic folk music that's now in Appalachia with all the different immigrants coming in. So this was a hugely important school. I have yet to see even my left-wing YouTube brethren do a video story on it. The only people carrying it is Knoxville Sentinel, which is a written site. CBS News is the only national news I've seen of this. And I think that's really a shame. I mean, if we don't protect our landmarks from the civil rights movement and other places, then we're going to lose just a big chunk of our history. And we can't afford to do that. When this school burned down, a lot of civil rights archives were burned down. A lot of the archives on how they had classes back in the day were burned down. And this is a real shame. And I wanted to do a video on this so people start talking about it more and working to fix this issue. Keep up with it. Try to Google Highlander Folk School periodically, see if the investigation's going well. And, you know, just take it to heart. You know, try to, if you can, try to go to that historical group in Mount Eagle, Tennessee. But I'm definitely going there next time I come back home on the 4th of July. So that's all I had to say about that. So peace.